Hello and welcome to the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me this week is nobody. Oh, hello. Nope, it's just me. Listeners, we've got a bit of a shortened podcast this week and we are going to try something just a little bit different. Work commitments have hampered our efforts this week to get the team together, enabling us to record a full podcast. So we don't have a comprehensive look at the Chelsea game this week, but what we did ask to do is the team to look at certain areas of what's been happening at the moment and record some pieces and some thoughts which producer Matt is very kindly going to knit together for us. And try and put something out there. So I'm not sure as we speak how long this podcast is going to take, but we're going to hear from myself. I'm going to have a quick look at the Chelsea game, and then we've got Tom and we have George as well, who are both going to give their thoughts on what have we got our thoughts on? We've got the transfer news, we've got the pressure that seems to be coming on Sean Dyche, certainly from the outside media looking in, and also Tom's going to have a quick look at the Drinkwater situation as well. So we have got some things to talk about, and let's see how this one plays out. So let's start with what on earth has been going on this week. Now, since we last spoke to you precisely a week ago when we came back for our first podcast of the new year, we were in the middle of a bit of a Christmas slump. And we were hoping that New Year, New Me philosophy was going to see the Clarets go to Chelsea and somehow pick up some points, and that was, as we now know, not to be. The Clarets succumbing to a 3-0 defeat. As we have seen all too recently as well, not the greatest of performances, and I think Dyche has said himself that this is a team that for some reason is really lacking in confidence. We seem to be playing with some shackles on our Jason shackles, some shackles on our legs, and we just don't seem to have the freedom and the belief in ourselves than we have done recently. Now, I think Dyche himself is one of the first to acknowledge that tends to compound itself, doesn't it? You get into a run of defeats and then that starts making you play worse and make bad decisions. But look, at the end of the day, this was a free hit. We didn't really expect to go away to Chelsea and get ourselves 3 points. A couple of things to note. Again, some sloppy errors for the Chelsea goals. We've really got to start looking at just basically cancelling them out of our game. It's really unlike us. We've always been known for being very rigid defenders and everybody knowing their job and everybody fighting for each other. And it's just been horrendous recently. Poor Matt Lowton back in at right back because Bardsley had been ill this week and didn't quite make it. Didn't really lay much of a claim, I don't think, to get back in that first team, and I do really feel for the guy at the moment. I think he epitomises a lot of the lack of self-confidence that I think some of these players have got. 3-0, of course, it could have been 3-1. We did manage to put the ball in the back of the net. Jeff Hendrick scored himself a goal, but our friend VAR massively overruled that and called the goal offside. It was one of those decisions, and to be honest, I've seen the stills and I've seen the replays of it. I'm not entirely sure that the VAR software has got that one right, but it's another one of those incredibly frustrating scenarios where Jeff Hendrick breathed a little bit deeper than his counterpart and his chest hairs were a bit further forward than his defenders. VAR and offside decisions, of course, continue to dominate the headlines. I think it's fair to say that the offside rule is not popular amongst pundits or commentators or fans. Yes, it's bringing a consistency, and yes, it's bringing fairness in that everybody's subject to the same bar. The problem that we're facing is that I don't think that the software is yet advanced enough to be able to make a legitimate call at that extreme. And secondly, I just don't think that's what the spirit of the game intended. So, guys, you all know our thoughts on that. Goodness me, we've talked about VAR and the offside decision for quite some time now, and we're not going to change it overnight. We know that the Premier League are going to be looking at perhaps relaxing those rules next season, but unfortunately there's nothing to do with it, and poor Jeff Hendrick has his goal chalked off. Does it change the game? I don't know. Dyche always says, doesn't it, that if we take these fine margins and goals go in, it can change the feel of a game. I do feel that Chelsea were too strong for us on the day, and I think inevitably they pounced on not a side lacking confidence. I know I keep saying this, but I don't want to say they're playing poorly. But that's the situation we're in at the moment. We certainly haven't got that fire in our belly, and Dyche himself admits that we're in a really, really tough period. There's two main things then, and I think the first thing that I wanted just to talk about is whether or not these recent run of results puts Sean Dyche in a rather unenviable position of having his job questioned. There's been an awful lot of talk in the media this week that Dyche is a manager under pressure, and I think any other team that maybe hadn't had the successes that we've had and the stability that we've had, I think these voices, external voices, definitely. I don't think these calls are coming from within the club. And whilst some fans, a small section of fans, have lost a little bit of patience and think that it's time for a change, I think certainly us and the majority of fans are still behind Dyche. So I think if it wasn't Burnley and it wasn't Sean Dyche, these external voices would be much, much louder. But there's definitely been a shift in the media this week to say that both Sean Dyche and Eddie Howe at Bournemouth are both managers under pressure. I suspect they've probably been lumped together because they are two managers who are the two longest serving Premier League managers. Obviously, Dyche took over from Eddie Howe, who went to Bournemouth when he was at Burnley. We all know the story. And I guess the debate in the media is whether the opinions we had a couple of years ago about how the longevity of these managers and the stability they've brought to the clubs has equalled their success, whether that has now turned into a staleness at both clubs, and both of them maybe at the end of a cycle that needs refreshing. We asked panellist George Poole to talk about the pressures that Sean Dyche and Eddie Howe are under, and basically analyse whether he thinks that is fair.
To be honest with you, I'm absolutely baffled by the pressure that both Eddie Howe and Sean Dyche are under. I think it's ridiculous that fans of either club could want the manager out, especially with Dyche at the moment. That the pressure from outside of the club should be more on Howe, because Bournemouth have been plummeting since the end of October, whereas Burnley, let's be honest, we've had a bad run since Christmas. On Christmas Day, we were 10th, and we looked like a couple of wins off, like properly challenging for 7th. It seemed like a really good start to the season. We'd beaten 3 teams 3-0. That's what people just seem to forget now. They're like, oh, we've always played crap football. Even in the start of the season, we were playing awful. We couldn't score goals. You don't beat 3 different teams 3 or 4-0 and be a bad team going forward. To be honest with you, I think that's ridiculous. Like, even in the Championship, we played really good football sometimes. We played teams off the park. Well, the difference being now that we've come up to the Premier League, this squad's reaching the end of its cycle, but the board won't invest. The pressure on Dyche, for me, is absolutely ridiculous, and it just shows such a lack of loyalty from fans, and it really annoys me, to be fair. I think it's disgusting to actually turn on the manager that's provided Burnley with all the success he has done. He's the most successful manager in our modern history. I think it's post 1970s. That's what you call modern history. I think so anyway. But our best manager in God knows how long is when he arrived. We were fourth or fifth favourites to go down from the Championship. And it wasn't just that, it's the fact that our entire club just wasn't set up to be even challenging for promotion. That's why when we did go up extraordinarily first time under Dyche, we weren't prepared at all. We quickly had to get all the stadium done. Just even little things like that, where we just had to get the whole club up to scratch to even be in the Prem. That's why, unfortunately, we went down that season. But then we came down, and guess what? The start of the season, by Boxing Day, after that 3-0 defeat at Hull, we I think we were about 5th or 6th, and we looked a mile off the pace, to be fair. We didn't look like we were going to come back straight up. But guess what? We stuck with Dyche, even though there was a lot of pressure on him from the fans at that point. But we stuck with him, and we went up as champions. He's shown time and time again that he can turn the club around when it's in a bit of a mire. I'll just bring up a tweet that I sent on Boxing Day after the Everton game, that awful defeat, where there was incredible pressure again for Dyche to be sacked. And I just tweeted, we felt like this coming off Boxing Day 3 years ago. Hull away, 3-0. Looked like all hope had gone. Then 23 unbeaten, staying up in Prem and going on a European tour. We can turn it round again, stick with the manager, stick with the players. That's the job as fans. And I feel the exact same way now. After Boxing Day against Hull, hope had been lost. We stuck with Dyche, he turned it around. After Boxing Day against Everton, we stuck with Dyche, he turned it around. We've done incredible things under this manager. And the loyalty that not only we're showing him, he's shown us loyalty. He's never left, he's never, from our perspective, he's never looked like he's wanted another job. He's got, and he should have, a job for as long as he wants here. And I think our job as fans is to support the manager and actually get behind the team, because that's the only way that they're actually going to improve. But yeah, he's definitely earned the time to turn things around, absolutely. Not only that, I think even if you want Dyche out, say you want him out, the practicality of this is, this Burnley board is not going to sack Sean Dyche. It would be absolutely ridiculous from them to do so after all he's done for them. They know he probably won't be poached by a big team. He's taken his club a long way. They've shown loyalty. They're not going to sack him. They've just offered him a new deal. Was it a few months ago? Was it late last season? But they offered him they've got him a 4-year deal. He's not a long-term contract. Why on earth would they get rid of him, right? And I think they're too sensible to get rid of him, because they realise he could turn things around. He's got his hands tied behind his back in some ways with the transfers. And he understands that. He's a perfect manager for that situation. So the practicality of it is, the board are not going to sack Dyche. So those calling for him to be sacked are just wasting their breath. And rather than getting behind the team, they're just being critical of it. And it's not going to do anyone any help. So just get behind the team when we're in this rut at the moment and support them. For me, Dyche is working miracles still. It's ridiculous. Even the greatest managers of all time, Sir Alex Ferguson, right? I get some people. I think Robbie, obviously from the No Name Never podcast from us here as well. He wants Dyche to go, and I get the idea that needs a fresh voice around the changing room. Sir Alex Ferguson was at Man United. What was it, 26 years? And it wasn't a fresh voice, but it was fresh faces around the dressing room. He'd bring in a new assistant coach every couple of years, just change things up a bit. He had about 5 different squads at Man United over his time there. More than 5, actually. He had way more than 5 different squads. And Dyche has done the same at Burnley. If you look at the squad when he first joined to now, it's not felt like he's had a total revamp, but it's just gradually evolved over time. And now we've only got, say, a couple of players still here who were here 4 years ago. And unfortunately, it's worked up until now, but it seems at this moment that in the last few transfer windows, the board just either don't want to invest anymore, or they have genuinely been priced out of the market, which I think is a credible argument. So it means the squad's not being revamped as much, which is why we're in the situation we are now with an ageing squad that's definitely coming to the end of its cycle. We can tell that by performances on the pitch. I'm not going to sit here and say we've been amazing. And the issue is, we've got this ageing squad and it now needs to be replaced, but Dyche isn't being given the funds to do that. So I just think he's doing a job with his hands tied behind his back. People need to look at the situation rather than just being emotional after seeing a crap performance and being like, Dyche out. I just think it's ridiculous. I think he's earned so much more loyalty from us. Even if we go down, I don't care. I want Dyche to stay at the club. He's an absolute legend, and I'll be absolutely devastated the day that he finally does go. Just the last point, Eddie Howe. Yeah, I think Bournemouth are going to go down, but he's taken them here from League Two. It would be absolutely ridiculous of them to sack him. It would disgust me. Bournemouth and Burnley, the two good things they've got going about them is that they're a proper football club. They're loyal to the managers. They've not got this absolute rubbish in modern day football where you sack a manager after 6 games, like teams like Watford do. It's ridiculous, and that's one of the good things they've got going for them, and we need not to lose that. So if either team goes down, they should keep the manager, in my view.
Yeah, some interesting stuff there from George, and I think we all knew that George was going to sit very firmly in camp. Dyche is not under any pressure. But, let us know what you think. I know we've seen various opinions on social media and people debating whether they think it's time for a change. I'm not really sure where I personally sit with this. I'm certainly not calling for Dyche's head. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to do to push him out now. Certainly not in this current run of games anyway, because goodness me, even with the team performing its absolute best, there's a good chance out of these 9 games that we've got at the moment that we would lose most of these games, because that's the nature of the Premier League. So I certainly don't think now's the time to be doing it. I think if we start going into our run of games against the other teams in and around our position, and it does start becoming apparent that he's perhaps lost the dressing room, or his tactics are just done, then I think we may have to start considering whether it's time for some freshness in the club. Now, the obvious problem with this is that, and quite rightly, most people are not necessarily pointing the finger at Sean Dyche for the problems that we have got within the club. They are pointing the finger squarely at the board, because we have had just transfer window problems for quite some time now, and we haven't been investing in the squad. We haven't been investing in the first team. We haven't been bringing players in who immediately improve the starting lineup. We've been buying squad players who give us a little bit of competition for places, and we've also been offering long-standing players improved contracts. That's where the vast majority of our money has gone over the past 18 months or so. The net result of that has been we are still operating on a very small squad, and our squad is ageing. I think Chris Borden at the Burnley Express interviewed Wade Elliott this week, who did make this very point and said that he felt that the recruitment policy at Burnley needed to focus on bringing down the average age of the squad, especially if we do lose McNeil in the summer. That's going to obviously very much damage us. But of course, we knew that, well, certainly coming into the start of this transfer window, we were almost shut down straight away. It almost felt like it was the first day of the transfer window, and Burnley came out and said that the incoming signings were probably unlikely. Since then, there has been some transfer rumours and some suggestions that we are in advanced talks with players. The first one was Conor Gallagher, who is a Chelsea young lad who's been playing on loan at Charlton. He's a defensive midfielder. He scored 6 goals and 3 assists for Charlton already this season. And Chelsea recalled him, and I think a lot of the Chelsea loanees were recalled in the January transfer window with a view to either sending them back on loan or maybe selling them. So Burnley were apparently in for him. And we were also linked, well, we are linked at the moment with Championship side Bristol's Josh Brownhill. And I can't pronounce this that well, so apologies. And Nicholas Eliasson. I hope that's correct. So again, reverting back to George, we asked George to have a quick look at 2 potential incomings and see what his view was on some potential new blood.
Yeah, so with the transfer front, so we've seen today being Wednesday, the 15th, Wednesday the 15th, yeah, we've seen that it's been confirmed that Conor Gallagher, who we'd been linked to, centre midfielder at Chelsea. I think he's only 19, gone out on loan to Swansea. The rumour was that they were going to recall him from Charlton and send him on loan to another team. Obviously, a bit of higher standard. Now, the rumours came out that Burnley were interested, but then it was quickly shut down basically because I think Alan Nixon had reported that Chelsea want him to get game time somewhere. And that's fair enough, so they've sent him to a top-end championship team instead of sending him to a Premier League team. And although he looked like a decent prospect, can't say I've seen much of him, but from clips at Charlton and by all reports he's been doing amazing stuff there. He could have done a really good job for us. But the issue is with that, fair play to Chelsea, they want their kids to get some game time. And the reality of it is, he's not going to get game time if he came to Burnley. He's 19 or 20. He's not going to be thrown in starting centre midfield for Burnley in the Premier League, especially with Dyche's historic track record of not really giving Lawneys much of a go. It's just not going to happen. So that rumour was quickly squashed. I don't know, but that rumour was quickly squashed. And the one thing that we've still got going on what is a quiet front on the transfer window is the Josh Brownhill link, and now he seems a real decent purchase for us. Banding around figures of about 8 million, 24 years old, centre mid, and it's what we need. We need centre mids. We need at least 2. I'm sorry, but we do. We had 5 defenders on the bench at the weekend against who were we playing? Against Chelsea. We had 5 defenders on the bench. I mean, the state of it. And that's 5 defenders and a goalkeeper. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we definitely do need midfielders in. Hopefully Brownhill seems a bit of like a creative centre mid. He can get his foot on it, box to box. And actually we play through midfield. If we had someone like him in there alongside Westwood, we wouldn't have to play the unattractive football of going long ball all the time. That's what we're doing. We're just kicking it over the top for Wood to run onto because we have to bypass the midfield because they're simply not good enough to get the foot on it, turn around and spray the ball out. That's the issue with it. It's not that we want to play awful football. It's just that we don't have the midfield to play better football. So we need a couple of a midfielder in there, a bit like a Stephen Defoe. I know it's cliche at this point, but we do imagine a midfield with Stephen Defoe in it. We'd start playing a bit more like the start of the European season than when we finished 7th. But we just need a midfielder in there who can do that. That's the issue. That's the main issue I see with how we're playing is we don't have a midfield to go through and we're having to go over the top. So if we had a centre mid who can put the foot on it in there, then and if Brownhill's going to be that guy, then that's perfect. I think I saw something in one of the Bristol newspapers that Burnley were interested in the summer, but realised that his contract might be run down. They'll be able to get it cheaper later. That sounds like typical Burnley. So the rumours seem pretty accurate. And if we can get him for 8 or so million, it's worth a punt, even if it doesn't come off. It's not that much money, let's be honest, in the modern game. So I'd definitely be interested in that. But other than that rumour, there's not much going on, is there, to be honest? And I think the fans are definitely starting to get absolutely, and rightfully so, annoyed with it. I'm getting annoyed with it as well, because Dyche is doing a job with one hand tied behind his back. It's ridiculous. We need a right back. Matt Lawton's been off the boil for 1.5 seasons now. Bardsley's not getting any younger. He's not too good going forward, albeit I think he's a bit solid defensively. So we need a new right back. We need at least 2 centre mids. And we're now halfway through January, and there's been one proper transfer link to Brownhill. And even then, it's been around for 5 or so days now, and we're still seemingly not done anything about it. It's just annoying, isn't it? Really annoying. And hopefully, maybe we can get Brownhill in. But we definitely need more. And I fear that by the end of this transfer window, even if we've only brought in one player, the fans are really going to start to turn. And the only way, fair enough, the only way they can voice that is by going on a match day and booing when we play badly. I don't agree with it, but it's going to end up like that if we don't make some signings. That's the message to Mike Garlick.
Doesn't it feel exciting to be talking about potential transfers? I know obviously we now know since we've recorded this that the Gallagher deal's not happening. But we are actually out there, it seems, and we are looking at players, which is getting us all a little bit more excited than we were on the 1st of January. And it's really needed. If we go back to that Chelsea game, Dyche had to name 5 defenders on the bench and a young lad who doesn't have a squad number, which is really, really difficult. And it does send a message out there that we shouldn't be still in this position after so many years as a Premier League club where we are scrapping around and having to play the injury lottery with players. We've talked to a lot of you this week who have suggested that it's time that we got rid of some surplus players, certainly the likes of Joe Hart, people like that, Matt Lawton. I think people talking about Robbie Brady has been talked about. A lot of this is subjective and I think links back to personal views on players' performances rather than effectiveness of the entire squad. So we do have to be a little bit careful. But there is a feeling that we have got some players who could be sold to free up some wage bills to bring other players in who would perhaps have a greater impact on the first team and get us out of the current difficult bit we're in at the moment. There's also been a very bit of a strange reaction to the often elusive Matty Vydra. A strange thing happened at the Peterborough game where he was brought on to ironic and somewhat sarcastic jeers by the Burnley fans who were singing "Who the flipping heck are you?" and also "There's only one Matty Vydra," which led to, in my opinion, a bit of a PR slip-up from Dyche, who came out in his post-match interview and said he was baffled by the reaction and said that, you think he'd have scored 20 goals last season, the reaction he got from the crowd. You're kind of looking at it and think, yeah, mate, that's the point. If you'd have played him, maybe he would have got 20 goals. But there are fans who are very much on board with this and want to see a player like Vydra brought in because, quite frankly, it can't get any worse than it is at the moment and we are struggling for creativity and goals. But then there are other fans who are genuinely questioning where this loving for Vydra has come from because they perhaps haven't seen a performance from him yet that warrants him being forced into the first team. And I suspect what's probably happened is that Vydra is being used as a catalyst to let the board and Dyche know that there is some fan dissatisfaction with the current transfer policy. We simply have to bring fresh blood in. And I think Chris Bowden at the Burnley Express, did do an interview, I think, with Wade Elliott, who summed it up very succinctly for me when he said that our recruitment policy simply had to look at the bringing the average age of the squad down. Despite Dyche's sort of put down of Burnley fans' view, I heard it again away at Chelsea when he was brought on. And actually, again, I'd kind of feel for Matty Vydra because he was brought on with 17 minutes to go at 3-0 down. And you think, what's he going to do? How is he going to possibly change a game that we've already given up on and we're already dead and buried? You're asking a player to try and pull in a performance that enables him to fight for his first place in the squad, in the starting lineup, yet you don't give him a realistic and adequate opportunity to do that. So yeah, on the whole with the transfer policy, I understand the restrictions we're operating under. I understand the challenges that we're facing. But I do think as a club, we're not helping ourselves and Dyche isn't helping himself in certain situations. So let's hope that we can get more excited as the month goes on. And maybe we will see some fresh faces, even if they are championship ones. Let's see. The transfer window, of course, became a little bit more important, I guess, with the news that Chelsea were indeed recalling Danny Drinkwater, or we sent him back, who knows which way it is. And I think the justification at the time was that we weren't able to find him the number of games he needed to get him fit. Of course, as soon as he went back to Chelsea, he was snapped up by relegation rivals Villa. And of course, he went straight into their first team and played nearly a full game. It's not that he didn't have the games to get him fit, he just couldn't get him Dyche fit. Drinkwater's a very divisive character, and who better than to dissect the pros and cons of this particular situation than our good friend and panellist Tom, who's going to delve straight back into Drinkwater Corner.
Hi, this is Tom, and I'm ushering you back over into Drinkwater Corner. You may remember earlier in the season, I was quite sceptical at the idea of keeping Drinkwater beyond January. A few people did make the salient point, and it's looking like a good point, that if Drinkwater left, we'd be left very short in midfield, and we don't look like we're in a massive rush to replace him as it stands. But in the intervening time, how much have we missed him. Cork and Westwood not playing very well. But I don't think Drinkwater did any more when he played against Man City. That was his only other appearance after the poor game he had against Sunderland. So it didn't surprise me to see that he was on his way. It didn't surprise me to see that he was keen to be on his way as well. I think probably the moment against Villa where he was stripped off, ready to come on, and then he was sat back down. I don't think any player likes to go through that. So it wasn't a surprise to me that the agreement came to an end in January. The reaction from our supporters has been quite interesting. When he immediately ended up at Villa, there seemed to be quite a lot of anger and frustration amongst our fans. I think the prevailing consensus seemed to be, well, if Villa wants him, then he can't be that bad. And if Villa wants him and are putting him straight into the team, like they did against Man City on Sunday, then he can't be that unfit. And is it the case that we've basically been paying his wages for the last few months just to get him fit, only for someone else to get the best out of him? So a lot of the social media reaction that I saw prior to the Man City game on Sunday for Aston Villa was quite negative. But that obviously changed quite quickly into the game. For those of you who didn't see it, looked massively off the pace, Drinkwater, nowhere near fitness, which is perhaps another reason why he wasn't playing for us. Gave away a goal. I think that's his third assist of the season, which sounds quite good in 3 games until you realise that only one of them has been for the team he was playing for. I think he set Rodriguez's goal up against Sunderland, but then he set Will Grigg up for Sunderland's equaliser, and he laid off a beautiful pass for his old teammate Riyad Mahrez to open the scoring as well. Or was it his second? Might have been his second on Sunday. He got a lot of stick in the press afterwards. Drinkwater had a lot of people writing him off. I think it looks like, at the very least, he's going to need a good few games before he's up to speed. I think it was a strange move for Villa. I don't think he's really what they need. The players they've lost, obviously Heaton a goalie, Wesley a centre forward, and McGinn's a midfielder, but he's much more dynamic, much more of an attacking midfielder than Drinkwater is. I think they're quite well covered at the base of midfield. Nakamba, Lansbury, so it seems a bit odd to me that they've decided to put another $50,000 a week on their wage bill with a player who I don't think offers them a great deal different to what they already had. It perhaps would have been more of a fit for it to stay with us in that regard. But I think either way, as you can see, the lack of game time over the last few years has really caught up with him, and I don't think even a Dyche fitness programme or playing for our under-23s has got him anywhere near the required standard yet. Will he get there? Maybe so, but how many more games like that are Villa going to have to put up with in the interim? I suppose that the real salient question when you look at it from our perspective is, had we been playing Drinkwater throughout August, September, October, when we were playing better than we are now and picking up points, would it have been worth sacrificing some of them points in order to get Drinkwater up to fitness and get him in the team? Probably not for me, especially with the nightclub incident wedged into the middle of that. Having said all that, I think it is quite soon to write Drinkwater off. We know he's got a good pedigree. We know there's a player in there. So I'm not quite at the stage where I'm rubbing my hands together with glee and mocking Drinkwater's downfall, mocking his last performance. I think if Villa do give him those few games, if they do get a little bit lighter in midfield, it might turn out to be a decent signing for them. But I can't say I'm too sorry to have seen him go, and I can't pretend that I didn't enjoy just a little bit that performance on Sunday.
Drinkwater Corner. What a shame that's not going to be a longer term thing, but never mind. Obviously, some interesting thoughts there with Tom. I think if you recall, like he said from earlier podcasts, he was quite keen on sending him back in January. I think Tom Claret, as he is known as on Twitter, very much lost patience with Drinkwater very early on after the nightclub incident. That's all we've got time for this week. As I said at the outset, a slightly different format this week, and apologies it hasn't been the interactive discussion that we would normally put out. But unfortunately, this is a volunteer role. We do the whole of None and Never team work in their free time for free, essentially, to bring you the podcast. We're all just fans producing something in our spare time, and unfortunately that does mean that real life has to put a bit of a dampener on it. God damn those jobs. But it hopefully doesn't happen very often, and the team should all be back next week, ready to dissect our performance away at Leicester and have interaction. But hopefully this has been enough to keep you going this week. It's been a series of monologues as opposed to an interactive chat, but at least you've had the thoughts of none and ever. Dave and I will be back on Friday for the preview show, when we're going to be looking at Leicester City at home, which I believe is on Sunday this week. Yes, Sunday, of course. And we will, as I said before, the main podcast will be back next Tuesday as normal. My thanks as ever go to producer Matt for, especially this week, having to literally receive about 45 different audio files from lots of different laptops and lots of different locations and try and knit it all together. Thanks, Matt. My thanks to George and to Tom, who both gave up their time and their laptops to try and send us some very coherent ramblings from my incoherent questions. So thanks for that, both of you. Thanks to Band Joyce for supplying the music to this podcast. But my thanks as ever, week after week I say this, but my thanks go to you, the listener, for downloading this podcast and checking in every week. Your support's very much appreciated, and we would not be here without you. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the Known and Never podcast. Until next time.